This podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today.
Hello and welcome to Give and Toke Cannabis Conversations, the show that elevates the conversation about cannabis to a higher level. I'm your host Paul, and today we welcome Tom Varga, who is the co-founder and CEO of Biortica Agrimed, which operates one of the largest licensed cannabis cultivators in Australia under the Green Farmers brand, who recently acquired a library of nearly 1,000 cultivars through Canadian-based Apollo Green. The original Green Farmers facility located in Victoria is a 4,000 square metre state-of-the-art greenhouse that grows medicinal cannabis for the Australian market, with plans for an additional 16,000 square metres in the near future. With over 20 years corporate experience, Tom's journey to the cannabis industry is founded in seeing a friend with cancer experiencing difficulty in obtaining Australian-grown, affordable and consistent medicinal cannabis. This informs the Green Farmers' vision to deliver better patient outcomes one harvest at a time. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please send us an email at giveandtoke@gmail.com or check out @giveandtoke on Instagram. And because we talk about cannabis on this podcast, it can be really hard to organically market the show. So please help us out by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, and also tell a friend. But for now, please enjoy my conversation with Tom Varga. Welcome to the show, Tom Varga.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to your listeners for playing along with us today.
It's really nice to have you here. Now, I had the privilege of visiting the wonderful Green Farmers facility almost a year ago now, and it did not disappoint. Does it ever get old being in that amazing greenhouse?
It's a really interesting question. I guess interestingly, the answer is no, it doesn't. But the other answer is, maybe sometimes. I guess, you've got to realise we're growing 30,000 plants in there, large facility. We're doing some pretty serious stuff. We're growing for I call them customers, but obviously patients and brands. But, we're growing for customers that have some pretty high expectations around quality and being on spec with the cannabinoid profile and what it needs to look like and what it needs to have as a terpene profile. So there's a big engine. And, as a result, there is no doubt that you are often looking at that big engine and feeling the weight of that and feeling the weight of an industry that 10 years ago didn't exist. Sure, there's the illicit market, but we weren't here 10 years ago. 5 years ago, the industry just started cultivating in Australia. And today, we're at the front of that. So sometimes it's extremely daunting and you feel the weight of that. Now, having said all that, we have Apollo Green with amazing genetics. We have 30,000 cannabis plants growing in the facility. We get to walk through our facility every day and face the challenges of what the plant brings, to be in there and to be in that environment and to be, I guess, privileged to be the current custodians of the plant and to try to take that forward with that sense of responsibility. Wow. How could you not be in awe every time you walk in the facility? So it's a double-edged sword, I guess, having been through a lot of facilities, hung out with a lot of amazing people in Australia and internationally. I don't think you can ever get bored with this industry. You can ever not be amazed with what we're doing. But there is also a weight of responsibility. And a cannabis year is like a dog year. It's 7 human years. It takes a toll. And if you don't find the passion and the pleasure with working with the plant, you're just not going to survive and you shouldn't be in our industry. So no, I take it back. It's always exciting. It's always amazing. What was I saying?
I often lament the fact, and my listeners sometimes mention it, this is not a video podcast. I might go down that route one day, but so often I'm talking to people where the enthusiasm is beaming through and that smile on your face, but we can hear it in your voice, to talk about it being a privilege, to talk about that weight of responsibility. People can hear that you're really passionate about it. And to me, and to many people, that's a really important factor of this industry, that the people who are working in it, the people that are running the show, actually care about cannabis, that this means something to them. And that really comes through in your answer. So that's really great. So I'm curious how you ended up working in cannabis. As you mentioned, this is a very new industry. It's a gold rush industry. There's lots of opportunities out there. There's lots of scary parts out there. What was your pathway to the cannabis industry?
Oh, look, I'm going to blame Matthew Turner, my co-founder, for all of this. It's interesting. There's probably 2 or 3 layers to this. Matthew Turner and I have worked together as co-founders on a number of business for 20 odd years. We had both come off our previous project, And I got a phone call from Matthew saying, would you mind coming to a meeting with his dad, Bill Turner? Would you mind coming to a meeting with myself and Dad? It's a cannabis project. He actually thought, was I really going to be on board with this? I have to say, 5 years ago, I had all the same prejudices and paradigms around cannabis as probably, well, now 50% of the population, but at the time, maybe 70% of the population. But I went along, right? It was a business, it was a strategy, it's where my skills are. Let's go along and go to a meeting. Interestingly, the meeting was shit. Guys on the other side of the table were a bunch of snakes, and go back to what you were saying before, bunch of snakes and con men who could smell the cannabis industry and thought they were going to rape and pillage, the kind of people we don't need in the industry. But what came out of that meeting was, I guess, my personal journey around awakening about cannabis and my personal journey about thinking about cannabis differently. And I put my research lens on, and we had a family friend of ours who had gone through breast cancer, and she had turned to effectively the illicit market to source her cannabis to help her through that journey. And as I started to do that digging and peel away, I guess, that veneer that 70 years of prohibition had put on the industry, I probably realized there was a lot of times where I had to look at myself in the mirror and go, I've got to challenge the way I'm thinking about this. And, we decided to give it 30 days to see if we thought there was an industry, to see if we thought there was viability, to see what the Australian market looked like, because God knows at that time, Paul, everybody was announcing bigger and better projects. We were following the North Americans. If you didn't add 25,000 square meters to your project the next week, you were irrelevant. And we sort of went, all right, maybe we can build a small niche business in the medicinal cannabis space that delivers high quality cannabis to Australian patients and just maybe changes the world for a few small people. That's what we thought. And we got into green farmers, and very quickly we realized that there are a lot of people in this industry, we call them the gunners. There are a lot of people in the industry that were going to do this and going to do that and going to build massive facilities in Toowoomba and going to take over the world. And we're actually doing nothing. We realized that everyone was making announcement after announcement just to raise capital. And we didn't like that. We really didn't like that. And that didn't gel with us. So, we mortgaged all our assets. We literally burnt the boats and put everything on the line to start this business. And then, yes, we started raising some capital from investors. And as part of all of this and getting myself up the learning curve, I realized what an idiot I was. I realized the prejudices that still exist. And I want to go into the history of why cannabis was prohibited and all of that sort of stuff. There's a whole heap of different views around that, and some of them are very emotive. I want to stay away from the emotion of it. I want to stay on the maturity of it. We realize we're maturing, that there is a plant-based medicine that can be a plant, not pills approach. There is a plant-based medicine that can help so much in wellness areas. I'd started digging in my own sort of inner circle of people and found more and more people who were turning to cannabis or had turned to cannabis and were too afraid about the stigma that came with that. And so next thing you know, like I say this story like it was a decade in the making. This is months in the making, and arguments with Turner and arguments with our other co-founder, Ben Ellerton, and really coming up to speed and meeting some amazing people. And I guess recognizing that we can't screw this up. We can't miss this opportunity. And, we went full steam ahead, and we thought we'd have a 4,000 square meter facility and do some really good stuff, and that'd be green farmers. Now we've got 20,000 square meters, of which 16,000 is progressively being developed, one of the world's largest genetic libraries, and really, I think, just playing a very small part in hopefully shaping the cannabis industry. But that's how I got here. And I now have a completely different relationship and experience with cannabis than what I would have had 10 years ago and even 5 years ago before this journey.
I think it's so important to hear about how quickly you were able to make that progression. And that is what I expect from a lot of people, because a lot of guests, and myself included, have had a long-standing relationship with cannabis where, it might have gone from just dabbling recreationally as a late teenager to actually discovering the therapeutic benefits. And, obviously someone like me is going to spruik those benefits because I've seen them personally for 20 years. But I think it's really great to hear from you that you were able to change your mind quickly, because I expect other people to do that as they discover the truth. There has been a wall up about what the benefits of plant medicine can be and, how well this can work. And there's a lot of fear attached to to things we've been told for a lot of our life, from Harold the drug giraffe right through to very serious things. So it's great to hear that you were able to make that shift. I'm seeing a lot of people make that shift. And, in time, how has that changed your relationship with cannabis? What is your personal relationship with cannabis now that you understand these things?
Look, as a CEO of a company, I'm never going to say that as a teenager, people dabble with cannabis. Right?
That's right.
We don't want to touch on those.
I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, you're allowed to say that. No, but from my journey, it's interesting. I'm going to argue this on two levels, right? Level number one, does our best oncologist have to have had cancer? No. Does our best heart surgeon have to have had heart surgery conducted on themselves? No. So I don't advocate that the best people in the cannabis industry that can help lead and run businesses need to necessarily be people who are cannabis consumers in some way and have to have a relationship. I'm going to put that issue out there. And I put that issue out there because A, I've subscribed to that for a long period of time, and B, I do fundamentally believe that this is about personal choice. People have to be comfortable with the choice, just as if it was opioids, if it was Viagra, it's personal choice. Do you need it? Don't you need it? For me, on my personal journey, I reached a point where I had recognized how much good we were doing with medicinal cannabis. I reached a point where I had seen some of the amazing benefits that medicinal cannabis can bring to a whole heap of different people for a heap of different indications. I'm not saying what it can, work for and not work for, because obviously there's a whole research thing and a TGA thing out there. But I will say we've seen anecdotal evidence of people talking about pain, insomnia, anxiety, depression. And I reached a point where I wanted to also see what the benefits of medicinal cannabis are. So my personal relationship with medicinal cannabis now is, sure, occasionally I'll use medicinal cannabis, whether it's around stress or whether it's around insomnia. And for my relationship and my journey with it, it's certainly an area that I think it does a lot of benefit for. Touch wood, it's also not something that, like any medication, I'm turning to necessarily a lot. But there is also a little piece here, if I'm being completely honest with your listeners, where there are products that we're putting out there into the market, and we do want to know what the effects of that product are firsthand. And so in the Australian market, maybe something we need to look at, the ability to test our products physiologically, right, to actually have the experience of is very difficult. So we actually have to back science with genetics, and we have to back the testing that we've seen elsewhere in the world, then bring it to Australia and take a massive risk and put it into the market so we can then try the product. Occasionally, when I feel that there are needs where, the insomnia gets the better of me, and trust me, that's not hard in the cannabis industry. Remember, a year is like 7. It's an amazing product, and I'd rather turn to a plant-based medicine than take sleeping tablets. I've never had a sleeping tablet in my life. I'm not going to turn to that. So that's sort of where my relationship is. And again, I go back to 10 years ago, Tom, just wasn't on that page. And I think there's a lot of great work that people are doing, like yourselves, a lot of great work that a lot of other advocates are doing that is helping take away that stigma and open up our eyes to sort of what cannabis can do. But it's not going to be for everyone. Just like opioids aren't, just like painkillers aren't, just like multivitamins aren't, and that's okay.
That's a great answer. And I think it's really good food for thought, because I think it's easy for someone like me who I have a very emotional attachment to cannabis, and I think it's important to know your own biases. And one of the things I often spruik is I think it is really, and one of the things I often hear is it is really important for people in the cannabis industry to use cannabis. But I think there is alternative perspectives. Ethan Russo, who's one of the most important academics for cannabis out of North America, does not consume cannabis himself, yet he's able to understand it, research it, explain it. So I think it is good to remember that as much as I like to say that everyone in cannabis should be, using cannabis or be familiar with it, not everyone needs to be, and there are varying relationships, and that personal choice is really important.
Here's the caveat to what we've just said, and we've talked about. Not everyone needs to do it. I agree. But geez, everyone needs to be really professional and passionate about this industry. You need to learn about the industry. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, Jonathan Jones, but, if you look at the message that Jonathan is putting out there each and every day on LinkedIn, the fundamentals of what he's saying is so true. Know your customers, know the product, know the experience, know what quality looks like, know the price points, know what the expectations are, know the difference between good and bad. And by the way, I'm not even sure that there is such a thing as bad cannabis. There's only badly priced cannabis.
Oh, I like that.
There's a price point for the quality that you produce. But how many people have had the audacity or stupidity, I'll let you pick which one, and entered our industry and decided to not learn about our history, our legacy, those peoples whose shoulders we stand on today, who have not wanted to learn about the Pauls of the world, the consumers, the guys who are out there who have a love and a passion and who are dedicated and committed to the product. Like if we did that in any other industry, you will not survive. If you're in airlines, if you're in capsicums, if you're in cucumbers, if you're in cars, right? You wouldn't survive if you don't understand your market and your business. So the same holds true today. Now, if that means you have to consume or not consume, that's your journey. If that means you want to try more products or only try products for your indication, that's your journey. And I think that's a really important point, that we have a medicinal system that allows you to choose your journey. But the fundamentals are the same. You really need to focus on the industry, the patient, the consumer, the market. And if you don't do that, you're not going to survive. And I think that's the real underlying message that comes out when I hear someone, whether it's yourself or anyone else, go, if you're in the industry, you have to consume. The real point is, if you're in the industry and you don't understand it, don't be here.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm inferring there is, do you think that perhaps the cannabis industry is uniquely underestimating its consumers? Like, if you're saying that you couldn't do this in other industries, but, basically people are doing it in cannabis, is there a position here where some people are really underestimating what we, the users, believe? Is that true?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And geez, North America taught us, if you grow it, they will buy. What a load of bullshit. What a load of bullshit, right? There's a phenomenal illicit market. In Australia, they're estimating 500,000 to 1 million kilos a year in the illicit market. Are you telling me that the consumers who are now moving away, who are self-medicating illicitly, are now recognizing that they can come into a legal environment and get a script and see a consult now at a reasonable fee and buy good quality product from a pharmacist? Are you telling me they have no preconceptions about what quality looks like? Of course they do.
Yeah.
Of course they do. So I think those who don't understand the market, those who are not listening to the market, those who are not in tune with what quality is at the price points, they won't survive. That's the green rush, and they won't survive. And the ASX is littered with companies that have missed that memo. And that's why I go back to that memo applies to mining as much as it does to cannabis. It applies to all other industries as much as it does to us. We need to understand the end consumer, and as we understand that, it helps us think back into our own businesses about cultivation practices. I'm pretty transparent, so I'll be upfront with your listeners. We're now at about crop 175 or crop 180. Paul, I'm embarrassed about our first 50 crops. I'm embarrassed. I look at those first 50 and I go, I can't believe I thought that was cannabis. But I look at our crops now and, we put 2 jars side by side the other day with someone who knows cannabis. One was imported indoor out of Canada and one was grown in our glass house. I'm not saying he couldn't pick the difference, right, because he should be able to, but he didn't believe that we grew that product. He was surprised, and that's a credit to our cultivators. That's a credit to our team. It's a credit to becoming 1% better every day. And I think if you don't bring that, you just won't survive. The patients will talk. The patients will make that decision with their purchasing dollar, and rightly so.
That's a really thoughtful answer, and it really creates a lot of thought for me. I think it's important for people to hear from the CEO of a company producing a pharmaceutical product just how much love, care, and passion goes into it. One of the expressions that was coined on this show from Andrew Dowling from the Altmed podcast and Phytoca is petite pharma. A lot of people like to talk about big pharma coming in. Even as you talk about 30,000 plants and 20,000 square meters of grow, it still really is petite pharma. This is not some big evil operation. Like, as you said, here you are being transparent, talking about what you care about, being embarrassed by early products. I don't know if a lot of CEOs are going to admit to that, and I applaud the ones that do. So thank you for that. You alluded to the Green Farmers origin story in the introduction about getting together with Matthew Turner. Tell me more about Green Farmers as an organization. Obviously I mentioned before I visited it. I loved the place. For me, it was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. For you, it is your place of work. Tell us about the Green Farmers origin story, post that meeting with those snakes.
Yeah. So it was really interesting. We decided this was an industry that could benefit from what we bring to the table. And what is that? We don't like industries that are filled with guys who haven't got good intentions. We call it our true north. But we don't like industries where they haven't got, a true north. We noticed that there were a lot of storytellers in the industry and not a lot of doers. And so Green Farmers really was born out of that. And when I say Green Farmers, our original company name was Cannabis Harvesting Investments. That's what we started as, and we acquired the Green Farmers site because it had a glass house on there, the 4,000 square meters that you were in. And we acquired that site and we wanted to do a retrofit under the leadership of Ben Ellerton, Chief Horticultural Officer, and really bring a 85% horticulture, 15% cannabis view to the industry. So, what does that mean? If you think about if you were growing tomatoes, cucumbers, or capsicums, you would have 85% of your knowledge is transferable to each product. But when you go in, you're going to find the old head that's been doing it forever and say, mate, come here. What do I need to know specific about the plant? So we brought that approach to cannabis. We didn't want to have an all legacy view because 30,000 plants is very different to what people may be growing in their basement or in their garage. But we didn't want to have an all cultivation view, because if you don't respect this plant, it kicks you in the ass really, really quickly. So, having Ben was mission critical in our organization. We built the Green Farmers site that exists today. Not many CEOs are going to be able to tell you that they were in there working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, dismantling a glass house, putting up cable trays, working out how we're going to run electricals and working with electrical engineers. Matt, Ben, myself, a couple of our early guys, Lockie and Wes and Damien, we were in there every day in our cargo pants, right? So we're in there and we're building the facility. So Glasshouse 1, we actually built with our bare hands, with our own blood, sweat and tears. Bunch of contractors, electricians, plumbers and all of those guys, and a big shout out to everyone who worked here. But that's how our journey started. That connection, I think, also gave us a lot of respect for, what it takes to grow and what it takes to have a facility and build where it is. So we've relabeled, or we've rebranded from Cannabis Harvesting Investments to Biortica Agrimed. And that's really biotech and horticulture. That's the Biortica. And Agrimed is plant-based medicine grown at scale. Again, I thought we were going to be a niche player, Paul. I really did. I thought we'd just be a small guy. We had an offtake agreement. Life would be okay. And we'll do some good in the world. And, you get to go home every day and say, not only did I work really hard, but we helped change the lives of patients one harvest at a time. That's what I thought we were doing, and then we realized that, 80% of the market, 90% of the market was imported. I hate that. Not because I don't think there's a lot of good cannabis out there in the world. There is. We've probably toured 100 plus facilities around the world now. There's some amazing cultivators. So some really good product. I hate that we are not supporting the local industry. I hate that we don't have a thriving Australian cannabis cultivation industry. And we can't get there yet. We can't get there. Even if all the capacity comes online, with the way the market's growing, we can't get there. But that's what made us decide to grow from 4,000 to 20,000. It's what made us realize genetics is a really big play. So we bought Apollo Green and brought that into the mix. And really, it's probably what's fueling our desire to make sure that we're producing amazing quality product, that we're meeting patients' needs, that we're partnering with any and every brand we can, and pharmacies and compounders and clinics. We welcome everyone to the site, Paul. We welcome everyone to the site. We love that. We love having people come in to play a small piece on the education, to play a small piece on helping regulators and legislators and industry players actually understand what's going on in the industry. And that's what led us here. And as I said, we mortgaged our houses, we bought the site, we started building. We had some amazing support from leading Australian brands who became our customers and who gave us the honour of working with their genetic in our facility to help them meet patient needs that they had developed a market for. Now we still do that. We're all B2B. We still do that. Now we have some of our own genetics coming into the market as well. and they're hitting the market. So that's fantastic. And we're really excited about seeing those genetics hit the market. But that's been this crazy journey. It feels like yesterday, but it also feels like 30 years ago. So that's sort of how we got to Green Farmers and how we got to Biortica, and just really blessed to have so many amazing industry people where we've dropped our ego. We are egoless. And I think for the industry, we have to be egoless. I love what you said before about your view on cannabis and people in the industry and their relationship with cannabis. And immediately on this chat, you've turned the mirror on yourself with no ego and started to talk about, hey, I feel challenged. I feel like I need to come back and check this paradigm out. That attitude, people like yourself and like us, hopefully, and so many other guys out there, that's how we build an amazing industry, because there's no one right answer. There's no one right way. I love it when people go, I have the best genetics in the best facility with the best people. If everyone's the best, who's screwing up? Right? So I think if we can get to this point where we really just open up, and that's the Green Farmers way, we can do some amazing things. So a long way of hopefully answering this was the journey and how we got here.
So one of the things that seems to be really important in cannabis cultivation is the people. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like there's a lot of agricultural industries that can be heavily automated. However, when I visited Green Farmers, I could see that people are really essential to that process. Everywhere I went, every room I visited, there was someone doing something, whether it was using the good bugs, the quote unquote good bugs for pest control, people checking on the plants and things like that. One of the exciting things about cannabis legalization is employment. So how are people important to the job you're doing?
Yeah. Wow. What a great question. First things first, like any industry, we have to be cost efficient. And I think as an industry, we are struggling with that on a few fronts, because many of our legacy guys are used to being able to talk to every plant and name every plant and kiss every plant every day. And that's obviously very difficult to be sustainable and still be competitive. Then you see the commercial guys. And I guess maybe I think of myself as one of the commercial guys, but, these guys aren't commercial like me. They're next level. They want no people in the facility. They just want full automation and baby plant in the front end and mature flowering plant out the back end. No one ever touched it, lowest cost possible. And we're all happy until we realize facilities full of powdery mildew or botrytis or fungus gnats are everywhere in the facility. And we didn't know it until the plant came out the other end. This is a plant that benefits from individuality. It's a plant that benefits from eyes on the plant. And, your experience at Green Farmers is probably really important about a big part of our philosophy, because we do believe that we want to have eyes on every plant every day. The good bugs, as you call them, or beneficials, IPM, the beneficials are a massive part of that. Releasing beneficial insects to fight the bugs that we don't want in the facility can't just be a blanket rule. Someone needs to go through and say, do I find that there's a few more insects in a spot? And if I do, what do? I blanket that area. We have a philosophy of killing the one plant to save the many. We go 2,000 per batch. So if we find one plant that's not right, we'd rather take the one out than keep it in, hoping that we get a bit of yield off it. And the reason we have so many people in our facility is because we have found that by having more eyes on the plant, by having more eyes on what we're actually doing in there, we end up with better yield, we end up with better quality, we end up with lower pest pressure, we end up with really understanding the individuality of the plants. Every cultivar is different. If you put two cultivars together and treat them the same, unless you're really lucky because they're similar in nature, one of them's going to kick your ass and the other one's going to be good. So we try to find this balance. We're not cost blind. And in our new facility, Glasshouse 2 and Glasshouse 8, we will leverage some technology like rolling benches that will bring the plants to the people rather than have to have the people go to the plants. Try to find some efficiencies. But to give you an idea, our business today around the world is 60 plus employees. At the Green Farmers site in Victoria alone, it's sort of 40 odd employees on that site. There's another 5 to 7 employees in our northern New South Wales site and growing. And by the time we hit the 1st of July, if everything goes according to plan, we're 100 to 150 people employer here in Australia alone. I guess, if I get to the crux of probably where you're going with this question, regulators, legislators, if you're listening to the podcast today, what you actually need to do is come in, engage with us, walk through the facility, listen to the numbers, and then help us get there. With 80% of imported product into the Australian market, firstly, there are Australian cultivators who are exporting, and we understand why, right? There's some really good margins to be made. Philosophically, we want to have an Australian first model, so we do not export. But we do need to find ways of, increasing the speed that we bring capacity to market so that we can get these jobs here. We can be a massive employer. We're great at agriculture. We're great at horticulture. Now cannabis is no different. It is horticulture of a medicinal product that is growing rapidly at somewhere between 50 to 100% year on year. And we're giving 80% of that growth away overseas. Like, come on, that message has got to be getting through.
I really loved everyone that I spoke to at Green Farmers. I've been to facilities where it feels a little bit like North Korea and they're wheeling out, the good person who can talk about what they're doing in there. Whereas everyone I spoke to, I almost couldn't get them to shut up. So it's not just that it's creating employment for people. It's actually creating employment for passionate people, people with horticultural degrees, agricultural experience and all this. These are specialized fields that people are coming. It's not just like an extra job in the economy. It's an extra skilled job. So I'm really glad to hear that you have that passion, and it was a real privilege to meet those people and see firsthand just how happy they are to be doing this. Now, I mean, some of them obviously mentioned that sometimes they go home reeking of cannabis, which can be a little bit of an issue with the police when they pull you over. But, that's one of the many areas we have to improve in this field is, the relationship with the authorities. And as you mentioned, relationship with our lawmakers and our decision makers, so they can see just how exciting this field is.
Absolutely. And to your point, we are lucky that we have so many passionate people in our business. And there are a lot of very tough gigs in the glass house. I mean, anyone who's default a cannabis plant, multiply that by 30,000 and do that twice every time, in its life cycle. And you start to get a real sense about some of the labor intensity that can come with this. And we do need to think about that with rotations of roles and all sorts of stuff. But we have some amazingly passionate individuals who are so thirsty for knowledge, who are out there learning off their own bat, who we're also encouraging. We're sending them on courses around the world and we're putting them through degrees and we're helping them get formal training and helping them get training from around, other people. But again, if I had a challenge for regulators and legislators, I've got a challenge for our legacy guys as well who are listening to this. And that is, don't be afraid. We need all three factors to come together. We need cultivation, commercial, and cannabis. So we do need the legacy guys to want to come to the table and to interact with the corporate guys and the cultivators. I have got a bunch of guys in our facility who are thirsty for knowledge. We work so closely with our customers who are also cultivators. And so, the challenge out there for any of the legacy guys who really want to share knowledge and who want to be involved in a large industry, come in and share that knowledge with the team, because there are so many great young people, guys and girls, coming through our facility who are just so passionate. And the next generation of cannabis cultivators, they are going to be weapons. They are going to be formally trained in horticulture and formally trained in cannabis. That is an amazing scenario, and that is right around the corner. So if we can engage with more and more of the guys in the industry, we do some forums, come down and share some knowledge and see what we're doing and look at what we're doing well and not well. Whether it's Jay from Keaton and whether it's Ben from Grodan, we've had guys come through and they share something and it makes us 1% better every day, 1%. Like that's what the industry's about.
You've mentioned the acquisition of the new genetic library. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, if we look around the world and we have a look at how genetics plays out, and particularly if we look at markets that have turned to adult use, and adult use can be very much becomes a sort of fast-moving consumer good type sort of structure, but particularly medicinally. We know so little about the genetics. 70 years of prohibition. We didn't have the chance to do DNA fingerprinting and research and development and bring technology into this space. And Australia didn't have an amnesty. We didn't have an amnesty. We didn't do what New Zealand did. We didn't do what Canada did. We sort of decided to take the worst of both worlds and end up with a, regulated market, which you have to have because we don't want diversion. But we got so concerned about diversion, we decided no amnesty, and we didn't allow genetics to appear in the Australian market. And we saw as a business that a big risk for our business would have been to continue to rely on pheno hunting. If anyone's done a pheno hunt, it's basically buying a lotto ticket on $100 million draw. You are hoping like crazy that your numbers get picked out. And sure, you might get 2, 3, 4 numbers and win $50 or $100, but to win the 100 mil, it's hard. So to do pheno hunting in Australia is a very slow process and high risk, and you have all this cost infrastructure that sits behind you. So we looked around the world, and we're all about working with like-minded people. If you have an ego and you're an asshole, I can't work with you. I'm sorry. I'm just categorically putting that out there. So if I'm talking to anyone right now and you fit into that category and we've been trying to do some work together, we're not going to. So I'm putting that out there right now.
It's not me, it's you.
No, that's right. It's not me, it's you. It's always the way. But we ran into the Apollo guys and we just found an amazing group of people who were passionate, who were professional, who had great legacy skills, and who had an amazing library, one of the world's largest. There's a bunch of different libraries out there, but close to 1,000 genetics, that are in seed, tissue culture, production, and now here in Australia, some of those here in Australia and more coming. And we realised that having that genetic diversity is so important. And it allows medicinal brands in Australia to pick the indications they want to target with cannabinoids and terpene profiles. And we can go into our library, we can specifically pick exactly what they believe is going to work for their patients. We can roll that out, not do a pheno hunt. We import the live plant. I can't tell you how, there's a bunch of IP around that, but we import the live plant. We go through the work and you end up with an exact breeder's cut of what we have over in North America. And then we can roll that out and do more good for the industry and for patients than what we otherwise could. And we're doing great work. We're working with Purple City Genetics, for example, out of Oakland, California. Amazing work. One of the most amazing breeders. You nearly did it. I nearly gave away 2 other collaborations I'm not allowed to talk about. And we've got 2 other big collaborations we're about to talk about over the next 30 or 60 days. Both of those collaborations, one, I'm so glad to have these guys on board. I love what they're doing. I can't talk about where they are because it'll give who it is away.
If it's Snoop Dogg and Seth Rogen, blink twice.
I wish. But they're doing some amazing stuff and some amazing country-based genetics that are very unique and that have been landlocked. So we're working on those. Another great brand that the announcement of which I think will be really, really phenomenal. And I am very humbled that they decide to work with us. I'm honoured that they decide that we're the right people to take them globally. But we can now take a genetic from North America, have it in Europe and Australia, in a very short period of time, really try to do something exciting. Our commitment to the Australian market, 50 genetics by June, 100 genetics by December. So no one's going to have, in my view, a genetic library that can rival what we're doing. Then we've got the cultivation facility to back it up. And why? Go back to the why. Why genetics? It's the future. Breeding with intent, breeding for indications, breeding in adult use markets for a particular brand outcome to give you exclusivity, to be able to do research with great research facilities, Laval, La Cité, Guelph Uni in Canada that we work with, to do that work, to allow the scientists to have a bigger palette to paint with so that they can create the masterpiece that creates the biggest change in the medicinal space. Paul, we wouldn't have been facing true north on our compass if we didn't get into the genetics game and stay upstream. We're not a brand in the market, but focus our attention upstream to make sure that we can move the needle as much as we can in the medicinal space and maybe find, the genetic or breed the genetic that has the biggest impact in cancer, in depression, in anxiety, in insomnia, in PTSD, pain, obviously, pain, right? Like we just wouldn't have been doing ourselves, I guess, a consistency with our values if we hadn't done it.
I think this is a good opportunity to talk about why it's so important that Australian cannabis leads the way in the Australian market. You know, you've alluded to the massive market share that imported cannabis has, and I think the fact that you're talking there about what your ambitions are at Green Farmers for increasing the genetic library so that we can have things that are available in North America grown here instead. So I think that's a nice segue into the question, why is it so important that our Australian market is better serviced by Australian cannabis, and what things can be done by producers, potential producers, cultivators, patients even, to expect more of that, to expect less year-old Canadian cannabis? You know, no shade, some of those products are still great, but it's the truth. Many of us know that we're getting some of the old stuff at inflated prices. What should we expect? Why should we want more Australian cannabis, and how are we going to get there?
Yeah, the analogy I keep using with everybody is, what's your favorite fruit? Well, what's your favorite fruit?
Mangoes.
Mangoes. If you had the choice of having someone walk down into the field, pick the mango, put it into a box, get it onto a truck, ship it to the supermarket, maybe a distribution center. Let's throw a distribution center into there. Ship it into the distribution center and get it onto the supermarket shelf. And that whole process takes 5, 6, or 7 days. Or we can import it. It can go through customs. It can go through its biosecurity. It can sit there and need to be investigated and checked, make sure that it's free of pests, then brought in, maybe 10 weeks old, 12 weeks old at best by the time you get it. Which one are you going to pick? I mean, every day of the week. And you know, we work with Canadian cultivators, please, you know, we have Apollo Green selling genetics to Canadian cultivators. They are amazing cultivators. There is some brilliant product. And I don't want to rattle through the list, but indoor facilities, glasshouse facilities, large-scale facilities, people growing amazing product in North America. And while the Australian market had cultivators who were growing poor product, I absolutely can understand that I would rather amazing product that's a bit old than local product that's not at the right quality level. But those days are over. There are a number of Australian cultivators, and I'm not going to go through and list the B2B guys or the brands because I don't want to put anyone in and I don't want to miss anyone out. But there are a bunch of cultivators and brands who are doing amazing things in the Australian market. And therefore, you're getting fresh, great product. You know, we harvest, we dry, we trim, buck and trim, we cure. It will then go into the system and might hit you from the time it leaves our facility, can be packed, jarred, tested, and released within 14 to 21 days. Right, then on the market. And then I can do that in 30 days again, and 30 days again, and 30 days again. So your product is never 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months old. So if you're a brand in the market and you're working with Green Farmers and we work together and we get our forecasting and timing right, you always have fresh product and you have product available in the event you have a surge. You know, we're importing product, and 4 weeks for an import permit, 2-3 weeks for an export permit. Then it's got to get on a plane. Then it's got to sit on biosecurity. Then it's got to get in the line. If you get it 3 or 4 months old, you've probably done well. Some guys might be doing it in 2 months, maybe 2.5 months. You're doing well. I'm doing it in 14 to 21. And so I think that's really important. Please don't buy inferior product though. Remember, no such thing as bad cannabis, only badly priced cannabis. So make sure it's at the right price point. If it's inferior product, it should be at an inferior price, right? But don't buy bad cannabis just because it's Australian grown. Otherwise, you're letting Australian cultivators off the hook, and I won't accept that, right? Not even of us. But we don't send it out. We'll QC it internally, and I can tell you now, I would rather burn a batch in the incinerator than send out product we're not happy with. So we'll always put that stamp on it, and that's what the Australian market needs now. We also need some of our guys who are running around acting as brokers to maybe, you know, realise that you can't just do 1 or 2 good shipments and then start sending crap. You know, we need to make sure that anyone who's an Australian brand, I'm not asking you to do business with us, but I'm sure as hell asking you to come through the facility, at least have a look. If you're not going to buy Australian, at least don't buy Australian because you looked at the Australian cultivation. Don't just not buy. So that's what we need as the industry. And if we can get that right, we're going to do really well. And you know, Australia's a great industry. We're very good at horticulture. We're amazing learners. You know, we're knockabout guys. So I think the ego is less in Australia than elsewhere around the world. It still exists. But as a result, we get up the learning curve quickly to produce good quality product. If we get the support right, and if we learn from the mistakes of regulators, legislators, and industry leaders out of the North American market, if we learn from their mistakes, Australia can be, like we are in so many other industries, and in horticulture and agriculture, Australia can be the world leader of cannabis cultivation. Full stop. Like, that is it. Maybe it's exclamation mark, I don't know, right? But we can be the leader, and we just need to not get it wrong and maybe not follow some of the proposed legislations that are being put out there, and recognise that keeping patients safe with TGO 93 and TGO 100 is really important. You know, managing the difference, like the wine industry, between boutique and scale is important. We can get this right, but we need to get it right by learning from others, not following others.
There's so many great takeaways there. You know, you reiterated that point. There's no such thing as bad quality cannabis, just badly priced cannabis. And I really love that idea. I don't think I've ever really had that perspective. And I think there's a whole array of cannabis users, and there needs to be different options for people. So yeah, if a batch didn't quite hit, there's no reason why it can't be discounted.
But also economically, you might not have the capabilities financially. And we're not on the PBS yet, right? Again, note to regulators, legislators, we're not on the PBS, and we should be on the PBS, right? But we're not. So for individuals who are doing it tough, we need to find ways of still giving them access to medicine. And the way I challenge the thinking is to think it's a bit like going in and buying the branded medicine or buying the pharmacy generic medicine. And the pharmacy generic medicine allows us to give medicinal access to the many, rather than limit the medicinal access to the few that can afford it, right? So we need to keep thinking about that. And as a result, the brands that are playing at that lower end, the product that's playing at that lower end, they're probably doing a lot of good. In fact, they're probably doing more good than the mid to top end products, because they're providing access to the guys, and we're getting them away from Dan the drug dealer, and we're taking them to Dan the doctor. And that is massive. So we take them into a safe, medicated, controlled, prescribed, knowledgeable environment. We're giving them clean, safe, tested cannabis, and we're doing it at a price point they can afford. That is magic.
So before we continue our cannabis conversation, I do want to pause it for a brief moment to discuss a passion of yours in quiz form. So knowing you're an enjoyer of wine, we are going to do a short 6-question quiz about wine. But before we start, in our conversation in the lead up to this episode, you mentioned that you found wine at times to be a useful comparison to cannabis to explain to some people. So can you tell me more about that first?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the amazing segue that you've just picked there is spot on. You know, I think there are $10 and $20 bottle of wines that are just phenomenal wines that punch well above their weight. You know, Taylor's just won Wine of the Year in a competition with a $18 bottle of wine. You know, amazing. And there are equally special occasions where you're going to want to open a, you know, Penfold Grange if you want, but a Celaya from Antinori, you know, which is an amazing wine out of Tuscany. And, you know, you might drink that once in a lifetime or once in a decade. And there's everything in between. And then you think about the aromas, you know, the terpene profile, if you will, right? The terpene profile of wines and the organoleptic experience, you know, and all of those sorts of things. To me, there are so many synergies. And I use the analogy all the time that this isn't about always producing Grange. It's not always about producing cask wine. It's about understanding the differences. And to me, the magic is finding a $20 bottle of wine that drinks like a $50 and a $50 bottle of wine that drinks like a $100. Like that's the fun. And I see so much of that in cannabis as well.
That's one of the things that, you know, why I'm such a proponent of the adult use market, not just so we can have access to whatever we want and get stoned all the time. It's actually to increase that appreciation of the product. And something that I love about wine that I would love to see more of in cannabis, and some people are going down this path, is, you know, appellation, terroir, the origins, like that being more, you know, really, really important to people. You know, I think we're still a long way from that, you know, even as we still use designations like indica, sativa, hybrid that we know aren't, you know, scientifically accurate.
Oh,
one day
no.
we can get there.
Oh, and it's crazy to think that there are so many of the old, and I say old, right? They were once upon a time appropriate, but so many of these old anchors that we hold on to, which aren't necessarily relevant today, and we need to find a way of bringing them in. And I think exactly what you're saying, like, you know, we believe in the idea that terroir is so important. We take a genetic and we can now grow that genetic in North America, in indoor, in glasshouse, in outdoor, in polytunnel. I can grow it for you in Australia, in Victoria. I can grow it in northern New South Wales. Hopefully, we're going to have a Queensland facility. Like we can pick and watch the genetic express differently in each of these areas and in each of these growing styles to find what works for the way you want to position your medicinal cannabis or the way you want to position your brand. And that is so important. And every other industry will do it. We need to bring the same sort of thought process to the cannabis industry.
All right, let's get on to the quiz. This is 6 questions. The quiz is an opportunity for us to educate ourselves. So hopefully there's some softballs in here, but there might be some tricky ones here. Let's see how we go. So question 1, from which French region does Chardonnay originate? Bordeaux, Brittany, or Burgundy?
Oh, I think it's from Bordeaux, isn't it?
That is incorrect. It is actually originated in Burgundy, but of course now it can be grown anywhere in the world. Question 2. A wine that smells musty or of wet cardboard when opened is a sign of what? Oxidation, a good Merlot, or cork taint?
Oh, oxidation.
It is actually cork taint.
Cork taint? Well, yeah, you could give it either or.
So cork taint is a result of a flawed cork, and it apparently occurs to 1 to 7% of bottles of wine. So it can be your unlucky day pretty regularly with cork taint. And of course, oxidation happens via cork taint. So, you're technically correct there.
I like how you pitched that one. That's nice. Thank you. I get half a point.
That's it. Question 3, true or false? Shiraz and Syrah are the same grape varietal.
Oh, you're asking all these interesting questions. Look, I go with true, right? Because at the end of the day, as a sort of wine lover, I think it's true. But there's many guys out there that would argue with us here.
Well, it is indeed true. The rest of the world seems to refer to it as Syrah. We here in Australia refer to it as Shiraz. And 2 of the best regions for that are Côte d'Aron in southeastern France and the Barossa Valley here in South Australia. So,
absolutely.
Fantastic. So, question 4. What is the most widely planted wine grape in the world? Is it Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, or Pinot Noir?
Oh, this is a good one. I'm going with Pinot.
That is incorrect, unfortunately. It is Cabernet Sauvignon. It is Cab Sav. 70,000 acres worldwide is dedicated to Cab Sav, so that is the world leader. Question 5. Approximately how many grapes does it take to make a standard 750ml bottle of wine? 20 grapes, 200 grapes, or 2,000 grapes?
I'm going to go with 2,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't say 200.
It's 200 grapes.
I'm going to have to brush up on my wine quiz.
Mate, hey, look, you're not the CEO of a wine company, so that's all good. Lucky last, question 6. Which of these is a Spanish sparkling wine? Is it Prosecco, Sect, or Cava?
I'm going to go with Cava, but it's definitely not Prosecco.
No, that's right. It is Cava from Spain. Prosecco is from Italy, and Sect is from Germany and Austria. Look, I didn't keep count of the score because the quiz is about education. Well done, Tom Varga. You've passed our wine quiz. I don't even know. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't.
I think I failed, but I failed with fun.
That's right.
As long as you fail quickly, that's okay. It's the cannabis industry.
We've all learned a little something about wine there. So let's shift our focus back to the Australian cannabis industry as a whole. You mentioned earlier that it's only been about 5 years that Australian cannabis has been grown, even though that we're 8 years into medical cannabis being legal. What is being done well and what desperately needs to be improved?
Yes. Look, great question. What's being done well? And I'm going to go out on a limb here because there's going to be many people in this industry that disagree. I do believe our regulatory framework is being done really well. It's being done really well. We have an amazing relationship with the ODC, and at the end of the day, they have a very, very difficult job. Their job is to protect against diversion. Their job is to protect the patients, TGA play a role in that. I think from a regulatory point of view, we are doing an outstanding job. And you can see the mistakes that many other people are making around the world. What else do I think we're doing well? There is a reasonable group of businesses, I was going to say brands, it's the wrong word, of businesses in the Australian cannabis industry, and it's not all, who are prepared to drop the ego and drop the bullshit and sit around a table. ACCC, if you're talking, there's no price collusion, there's no talk about customers, right? So if there's someone's listening, none of that. It's all about industry development and industry enhancement. So I think we do that okay. We need to do that better, because if we do that better, we have to realize it's feast, not famine. There is enough here for everyone. We're fighting the import challenge more than anything else. So we need to get our head around that. What are we doing poorly? Hell of a lot of imports. I understand that that's also partly because of capacity and quality. So we need to be careful that there's not enough capacity and some people aren't producing quality. I would never begrudge, I said before, buying Australian over quality. But I do think we need to get that happening. I used the analogy before. Don't just buy imported because you've never seen Australian. So we need to do that better. I worry about the legislative framework that's coming, so not the regulatory framework, but legislatively, we need to remove the stigma of cannabis and medicinal cannabis. We need to increase our engagement and really, get legislators down to the shop floor. Criticism of ourselves and criticism of some people in the industry as well. We need to engage more with legislators, and we're going to do that in 2024. So we need to do that. I think probably the capital markets have not been great to the cannabis industry at the moment. And we're one of the lucky ones, touch wood. Capital markets have been extremely supportive of our business. We have an amazing group of investors, and we have, really good people who are coming on the journey because they can see that we're doing it right, and they can see the quality we're producing, and they see the results in our sales and our revenue. But we do need the capital markets to sort of come in and realize that we're a cannabis 3.0. We're not making the mistakes of the 1.0 and the 2.0s. We don't build it and hope they will come. We don't build facilities and just figure any cannabis is good cannabis. So we need to see that improve. I'd love to also, I guess, as an industry, just find a way of elevating the conversation. How many patients out there don't even know about medicinal cannabis? How many patients out there don't even realize that medicinal cannabis is both CBD, THC, balanced? That dialogue needs to shift. But we also have to make sure that all of us in the industry, in the meantime, until that dialogue shifts, plays by the rules. We cannot and should not give anyone in the world outside a reason not to recognize the benefits that a plant versus pill, philosophy can come in, about the wellness that medicinal cannabis can sort of generate. And how we do that is through mature conversation, mature posts, mature stories, mature podcasts like this, right? Like we have to make sure that we're very careful with the message we're sending out. And that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. If we're not professional, then the regulators and legislators will take a very different view of how they look at our industry.
There is a lot of responsibility in operating in this field, whether you're growing cannabis, you're a cultivation company, you're a pharmacist, and whether you're a consumer. I think this is a really unique area of consumption where consumers can ask for more, where our voices can be heard. I think Canada's a great example where they're 5 years into adult use legalization, and there's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of changes to be made that would benefit consumers, would benefit the companies that are growing cannabis. So in Australia, what can we as consumers and cannabis patients do? Who can we ask more of? What should we be advocating for? What should we be agitating for? Who should we be bothering? My MPs are sick of hearing from me. What can we do in addition to that?
Yeah, look, this is an amazing question. And very rarely do I get a question where I just sort of go, wow, I think I need to take that away. But, maybe this is payback. You've got me challenging my paradigms all of a sudden because I haven't thought about, what patients could necessarily do and what consumers of the product could necessarily do. I think we need to make sure we have a balanced conversation. The way that we're going to get to better outcomes for patients, to better accessibility, to maybe being on the PBS is not by being a massive agitating voice that is hitting everyone with a rose in our hand and hitting them with the thorns. That is not how we're going to get there. All that happens is they'll turn around and say you're a prick, right? What we actually have to do is find balanced ways of talking about the great news stories, more sharing about how it moved the needle in our personal lives, more advocating from I have gone from X to Y, life is so much better. I can't mention the company, but I sat down with a company the other day and they rattled off a bunch of high-profile names, all of whom had benefited by taking their product and had gone from chronic pain, debilitating pain in some way, inability to have meaningful life, and had now turned to medicinal cannabis and are having functioning, fantastic, active lives again. And they're the stories we need to get out. I, as a CEO, try to destigmatize it wherever I can. I try to tell my journey and my story to help people go, whoa, okay, now that's challenging my thinking. We need the consumers to do the same, but from their perspective. And maybe we can meet in the middle, but just advocating about growing plants at home, just advocating that we should have coffee shops everywhere that are now selling cannabis, or that you shouldn't need a license to grow cannabis. All of that creates so much noise and detracts from the story. I think it's sharing the good news. It's sharing the I'm off opioids. It's the sharing I'm off sleeping tablets. It's the sharing that I've gone from chronic pain to functionality thanks to oil. It's all of those sorts of things, and bringing the majority of the voice, because right now the minority of our industry voice is dominating the theme. Reddit dominating the thematic. Regulators, legislators, adult use dominating the thematic. We need to get back to the majority talking about what it does, and that'll benefit both markets. That'll benefit all users. But at the end of the day, our industry and our regulators and legislators, they're looking to make sure that we're improving lives. And I'm a convert. I've drunk the Kool-Aid. We are improving lives with every harvest. So we just got to get that story out more, rather than just, the complaining and shaming, right? The complaining and shaming that goes on at the moment in the industry.
Yeah, you mentioned Reddit there, and that's something that has popped up quite a lot. It's an essential resource for those of us operating in the industry to learn things, but it's also a really interesting insight to what a cesspool, my word, not yours, I'll take the hit on this one, what a cesspool it really can be. You can sometimes spend a bit of time on there, and there's really not great conversation and not great viewpoints, and some really kind of aggressive attitudes about certain things. There's a lot of benefit there too, but you've got to wade through a lot of muck to get through that. So yeah, we need to expand a little bit beyond that world. And the people on Reddit, I say that as an active participant, need to just broaden their horizons a little bit, think twice about things before they make judgment, make broad sweeping statements, because there's so much excitement in this industry. There's so much to be happy about. And I think, as a bud tender, I noticed a lot of pessimism and a lot of focus on what the Canadian industry wasn't doing at the time, what consumers weren't happy with. But, as a foreigner there, I was just amazed at what we did have. And at times it let me, see the glass as half full. And I think that's something I've really taken from this conversation with you. The glass is, probably beyond half full. It's probably 3/4 full. And while we need to advocate for the things that aren't working, that's a natural part of the process. We can also really celebrate what is working and what is fantastic about this industry. Today, which I did not expect, I have access to safe, regulated cannabis. I have access to a medical professional that helps guide me on that journey. And I've said to my doctor, even if adult use is legalized, I will still maintain my relationship with my medical practitioner. I will still remain on medical cannabis because of the precision that is going through that experience. I'll use adult use for, a CBD bath bomb, a beautiful fancy joint on a Friday night, but medical will continue to, fulfill my life and my lifestyle. So let's be excited about what we've got. Let's advocate for the changes we want and try and work together. Whether it's on Reddit, whether you're in a company and everything in between, we're better together.
A difference of opinions is healthy. A disrespectful difference of opinion is unwanted. And that's where we just have to get that balance right. And go back to what you just talked about with adult use. The challenge for our legislators should be, here's your chance to get it 100% right. If you bring in adult use and you tax it, then let's also have a PBS where that tax revenue goes to covering the PBS costs for those that really need it medicinally. Right? Let's get this right. Let's get it right. And we can. And that'll change maybe the bar about getting medicinal cannabis or whatever, right? There might be some different hurdles around getting it. And that's fine. There's a lot of detail to work out there. But we have the opportunity to get this right. Now, we're a long way off that. There's a lot of water that has to go under the bridge before that discussion arrives. But now's the right time to say, if you had a blank sheet of paper, which we do, And if you had the opportunity to write the rules, which we do, and you could learn from everyone else who screwed it up, which we can, what would it look like? And to me, that's what it would look like. It would give cancer patients free access to medicinal cannabis. It would give chronic pain sufferers free access to medicinal cannabis. And why? Maybe it's the tax revenue from something else that's bringing that support in, and it's no hit. And by the way, we haven't even tried to quantify the benefit that can have due to some of the more other harmful sort of pill-based medicines that are out there. So easy to say, hard to do, but the opportunity is in front of us. And I love your analogy. Let's focus on all the stuff that is so good with the glass that's 3/4 full, and let's get that piece right. But let's continue to point out where we need to improve, because that's how the glass gets a little fuller every day, 1% every day.
You mentioned, respectful disagreement and respectful discourse. One of the things I kind of want to discuss as we head towards the end of the show is the article that you featured in the ABC in November. So that was an article commenting on David Shoebridge and the Greens' plan for federal legalization. So I was lucky to have David on the show earlier last year to explain the model. And while I'm very much in the, I'll take what I can get camp, I do see that it is far from the best model that I've seen. You mentioned what we can learn from around the world, the mistakes that have been made. I don't believe that this is the model that's going to, get us over the line. So you did reserve some respectful criticism for that model of adult use legalization. I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit more about that, and perhaps, what, you've already alluded to it already, but what your vision for adult use could be, or what we kind of, that water under the bridge we need to get right before an adult use market.
Yeah. Number one, governments are horrible wholesalers. They're horrible intermediaries. It doesn't work effectively. Now, okay, sometimes in utilities, power, water, etc., right? Like, it can make some sense. I get it, but this is not a scenario where it makes sense. And if we don't believe that, then we just need to have a look at Canada and see how, those intermediaries are effectively controlling the market. They are dictating what products hit the market. So no free market economy. They are significantly impact the price, right? Like, guys are buying tax stickers and monitoring tax stickers like as if they were golden eggs. So this crazy scenario. There are aspects of that sitting in the legislation that's proposed. We can't have that. ODC, TGA, two existing organisations doing great work and doing a great job. Why the hell do we want to create another layer in there? Let them do their job. Let them do what they're doing now. Diversionary risk is really good. Patient health is really good. We're doing our testing. We're doing our monitoring. Leave that in place. Again, the legislation was proposing an alternative to that. And then the idea of effectively, and this is probably not going to resonate, and I apologise for all the listeners here, but the idea of people growing at home or growing on small scale and putting that product through coffee shops and stuff like that is a recipe for seeing things that, and again, if you're a listener and you would never use growth regulators, and you'd never use pesticides, and you'd never do something, that might combat an issue with your plant that fundamentally wouldn't pass TGO 93 or TGO 100, I apologise to you, you're not in this camp. But there are people that will. There are people that do. And now to have that product go into the mainstream and being sold in an Amsterdam-like model, again, that doesn't make sense. This is a product that is inhaled or ingested. I don't know about you, and I don't know about your listeners. But if I'm going to inhale it or I'm going to ingest it, then I tell you now, it better be safe. And how do we make it safe? It's not about big corporate. But every time we do a batch, Paul, it's thousands of dollars in testing. Thousands. And it's multiple levels of testing. We'll test, packers will test, sometimes the brands will test. There's so much testing going on, all to keep end patients, consumers, users safe. That needs to stick around. So they're probably the three big areas that I look at. Big pharma, define big pharma. Are we big pharma? No, I don't think we are. Well, we're farmers with an F, not with a PH to start with, right? But, I don't think this is about size, right? We don't do that to the wine industry. I don't think this is about money, right? What this is about is saying, let's get those fundamentals right. Let's keep the protection in place. Let's allow a free market. Let's tax it appropriately and put the tax dollars to the right place. That starts to make sense around adult use. But here's the other flip side, and I throw this challenge out there, and it's a big challenge. In every market, adult use comes in, on the balance of probability, I'm not going to say it happens all the time, but on the balance of probability, most companies that are in that market take their eye off the medicinal market.
Oh yeah, Canada's a great example of that. Yeah.
Correct. And right now we are so early in this journey. We are still we're one lap into a 10-lap race, right? So we're still so early into this journey. I think we still need to let the medicinal market continue. We still need to let the medicinal market get to where it needs to get to. So I wouldn't want adult use creeping in anytime overly soon. You know, it can't just be a tax grab for a state that might be broke, where my facility might happen to be in, without naming them. Right? So it can't just be a tax grab for a state that needs money. We have the chance to look in the rear vision mirror while holding the steering wheel. Let's learn from where the other guys went wrong, and let's get that right. So will it happen? As I said in the article with Amelia, will it happen? Absolutely, it will happen. You know, do I think it's 10 years? No. Do I think it's 3 years? No. You know, it's somewhere in between. And that gives us enough time to get it right and sit at the table. And whether that's with David, whether that's with other legislators, whether that's with the Cannabis Party, you know, really keen to have our voice with federal, with state, with emerging. You know, we're happy as Biortica to be sharing our thoughts on it. And we can respectfully disagree. We can respectfully put other views up. And the answer is not what I'm proposing. It's not what you think, Paul. It ain't what David thinks, and it's not what anybody else thinks. It's probably somewhere in between all of us. And that is how we get great outcomes for society and the industry.
That's a really thoughtful answer. Take that guy on Reddit who said, oh, of course the pharmaceutical guy doesn't want legalization. It's a very thoughtful answer, Tom. Thank you.
And we're farmers with an F. So to that guy, have a look at how we spell green farmers. It's with an F, not with a PH.
I think there's a lot of really misguided anger towards quote unquote big pharma in cannabis, when it's just not where the issue lies. It's not a big pharma issue. It's about us coming together and working out what we've got. And, you know, you guys in your petite pharma position, you've got a lot of good things to say.
And we should still be held to account.
Yep.
We ever lose our way, we ever stop following our true north, we should equally be held to account. You know, but we do a lot of good in the industry. And you know, again, I don't want to give anything away, but, you know, our charitable endeavours in Q2 this calendar year will kick off. You know, so there'll be some really good stuff we're doing about putting back into the industry. You know, we take that responsibility and that obligation very, very seriously. And, you know, not having stockouts and having high quality product and meeting the testing regime and, you know, growing high quality products. All of that is what we should be held to account by. And if we lose sight of that and, you know, we end up like, you know, big pharma with a PH, where it's all about the dollar and how we can rape and pillage, then I hope the market talks and teaches us a lesson and somebody else comes in and behaves better than we did. But that'll never happen, Paul. It'll never happen. We're not losing our way.
No way, no way. And, you know, I can hear that in this conversation. You really, really care, and I really appreciate that. So as we near the end of the show, it is now time for Polls of Wisdom. While we value the long-form conversation, we must now leave the listener with one key takeaway, dinner party fact, or perhaps even a call to action. So, Tom, what is your Poll of Wisdom?
Yes. I had several, and you didn't make it easy. You've kept me to one, or kept me to one. So, you know, my one pearl of wisdom is let's work together. Let's work together. That's for everybody. Let's just work together. We're going to have different views. You know, there's going to be times when we're just not on the same page, and there's going to be times when we look at the industry and we think, why the hell is that happening? And there will be times when things happen in the industry, and maybe it's really difficult for us to ascertain exactly why that makes sense and why it's a good thing. But if we work together, you know, people can contact me. It's not hard to find my email address. You sure as hell can contact me through the website. You can come through any of our socials. You know, I will do whatever I can to be really accessible and to talk to, you know, anyone in the industry. But if we work together on the Reddits, on the industry forums, at cannabis conferences, you know, if we work together with legislators and regulators, and as an industry, if all the brands and other cultivators, we all work together, we are going to lead the world around what a great model for cannabis, right? Medicinal today, whatever it will be in the future, but what a model for cannabis can look like going forward. So work together, 2 words. Work together.
For listeners who do want to work together, I'll put the links in the show notes below to the Green Farmers website. You do some great things on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn users can obviously find you there if they actually do know you, of course. And I'll make sure that they're down below so people can get in touch. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you for your time and sharing your ideas. Your perspective on refining what the medical market is was very enlightening and certainly food for thought there. So thanks for coming on the show.
Mate, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And I'm looking forward to having you on site in the next month or so. Come on. Get back down there.
I will be back, I promise.
Love to have you down. We'll have some lunch. We'll get some pies from the local bakery and go for a wander through the garden.
That sounds brilliant. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Paul.
Give and Toke Cannabis Conversations is written and produced by me, Paul. Music written and produced by Big Mike. Follow us on Instagram at Give and Toke or get in touch by emailing giveandtoke@gmail.com. All opinions expressed by program guests are solely their current opinions and do not necessarily reflect the position of Give and Toke. Content discussed in this show does not constitute medical advice. Cannabis is not legal everywhere, so please be aware of local laws.